Welcome to Another Thing. I'm Larry Menti. If you have a loved one dealing with addiction and you are feeling desperate, looking for help, it is there for you. If you happen to live in one of the 33 states that has a path to involuntary rehab, meaning you can force a person into rehab even if they don't want to go. That's available for you in Pennsylvania, in Delaware, and New York, but not New Jersey. However, there is a bill in the Assembly that is expected to pass. That's our topic today, and we begin, as we always do, with Ellen Kolodziej. Ellen.
Thank you, Larry. Tens of thousands of people die every year from a drug overdose, and so many relatives agonize over what they could have done differently. That's why New Jersey is the latest state trying to pass a law that would let a relative force somebody into rehab. But some doctors on the front lines say that's not the answer.
I'm anticipating the inevitable, which is my body's going to make me come down. And that's hard for me, physically and mentally.
Seeing anyone on drugs is painful, but making them get help doesn't seem right to everyone.
Just having a diagnosis and family members who are overreactive, or rather than using overreactive, fed up with the shenanigans of their loved ones, to have the ability to have them locked in a facility, that just doesn't make sense in the United States today, to me. And I would be vehemently opposed to that.
Dr. Bill Lorman has been treating drug addicts for decades. He now works at Livingren, a renowned rehab center that focuses on getting people clean and giving them skills to change for good. He's also a lawyer and thinks a bill introduced in New Jersey that would force an addict into rehab violates a person's civil rights.
Just because somebody has an addiction, I would assume that the Constitution allows people to have an addiction and not have the government interfere with that.
33 states do have a law allowing involuntary commitment, but many of those, including Pennsylvania, require proving the addict is an imminent threat to himself or others. In most cases, the addict's insurance has to pay, not the government. New Jersey Assemblyman Joe Laguna is fighting for the same law in his state and says the family of dead children have asked me to do this. Is it needed? Are we going too far? The situation is dire. Many experts say addicts must be ready to change, or any rehab is worthless. Others say any treatment can help someone realize they've hit rock bottom. Either way, Dr. Lorman says there are no guarantees.
They may end up completing the program, or they may not. They're free to leave. And even within that population, there are people who complete a program and leave and may OD and die.
Now, some New Jersey lawmakers did try to pass this bill a few years ago, but it died in committee. So Joe Laguna hopes he has enough votes this time around to make it happen. Reporting for Another Thing, I'm Ellen Kolodziej.
All right, thank you, Ellen. Now to talk more about involuntary drug rehabilitation is someone who has been involved with the process. When she was down in Florida, she's now in New Jersey, and I'm sure you were surprised to find out that they don't have involuntary drug rehabilitation here in New Jersey. Jackie Adams is a psychotherapist. Before we get to New Jersey and the surrounding states, let's talk about Florida and what the laws were there. If a family member or somebody was concerned about somebody that, say, was a heroin addict, how could they get them into drug treatment even if it was against their will?
Okay, there was paperwork involved that had certain criteria, and it was then presented to whatever agency were collecting basically that paperwork, and it was presented to a judge, and the judge would make the final decision whether or not that person was able to get into treatment or they would have to go to jail. That was it. You either went to treatment or you didn't, you went to jail. And most of the criteria was about what the families had seen. Families, friends, cousins, anybody. That was a harm probably to themselves more than anybody else.
They would have to go to jail?
Yeah, if they didn't go to treatment, that was when the Marchman Act, which it was called, was enforced on that addict. If they refused treatment, then they got jail time.
They would have to be able to prove, and I would imagine the people that brought them there would have to be witnesses, sometimes against their loved ones, to send them to jail. So the person would have to know as they go forward that it's possible that person's going to jail.
Yes, and that's the thing. That was kind of the hitch, because people didn't want to hear that. However, most of the cases, they did not go to jail. They went to treatment. And that's all that mattered, was that they went to treatment. But what was enforced upon whoever it was that was, filing the Marchman Act is that it was about keeping that person safe. So whether they were safe asleep in jail for a while until they decided they would go to treatment, or they would be in treatment, they would be safe.
This country long ago railed against, through the Supreme Court, who ruled against involuntary treatment of those with mental illness. And it's been much more difficult since then to put away, say, a family member or someone you know because of mental illness, because of individual rights.
Yes.
Have you had blowback on this legislation, had blowback on this law because of that?
I have never seen that.
And what do you think
seen it
that
happen.
is?
I honestly don't know. I think it's the support of the people, and maybe the addict finally comes to conclusion that this is the right thing to do. I don't know.
But it wouldn't always be the individual. It would be the ACLU. It would be a civil rights group that would come forward. Right, and that has not happened?
I haven't seen it. Haven't heard of it, haven't seen it.
Because we should point out that this is now the law in 33 states. And Pennsylvania has a law. It differs from state to state, but Pennsylvania has a law. Delaware has the law. New York has the law. They all allow involuntary drug rehabilitation if it can be proven that the person, I guess, has to be a harm to themselves or to others.
Yeah, yes. Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And by the way, that might be the loophole. I hate to phrase it that way, but that might be the reason we haven't had pushback from the ACLU. Because even if somebody has mental illness, they can be put away if they're a harm to themselves or to others.
Exactly.
And so you're now pushing for legislation in New Jersey.
Yes. Yes. There's been a lot of talk about it, and it's really an important thing because I have families that come to me all the time, and they're like at their wits' end. They're loved ones are addicts. They're not wanting to go to treatment. They're not willing to go to treatment. They're not living, a productive life in any way. And it becomes very scary. And mostly it's families that come to me, parents of, and I'll call them kids, but they're usually not. They're at least in their 30s and sometimes 40s.
And an addiction sometimes robs people of rational thought. So even though they believe they're being harmed in some way, the families are trying to save their lives.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you think the state should take a part in that?
I do. I really do, because I think it saves families, it saves lives, and it makes families come back together. I've seen it happen enough times than not. I've not really seen it go badly. I mean, the only bad part, if we want to call it that, is that once that addict gets out of treatment, they relapse. For them to be Marchman acted another time is usually not going to happen. But by then, the family's been very educated in what they can do and not do and how they're feeling, and they've probably been through some therapy themselves by then. So, yeah.
Let's talk about Vivitrol really quickly, another drug. What does Vivitrol do?
Vivitrol basically just blocks you from using. In other words, when you're using, it's like an antabuse is what I always equate it to. An antabuse was a drug and still is available for alcoholics. And if they were to drink, they would get very ill. So Vivitrol keeps you from, obviously, not wanting to use your drug, and probably will get fairly ill if you were to have.
And this is available now?
Yes, yes, and it's given on a monthly basis.
And could that be mandatorily prescribed?
I don't know. We haven't had a lot of research on Vivitrol right now. I mean, I could see it happening. Not everybody wants to get clean and sober with that. Like to some people, that's just another crutch, so to speak. But it may help you for a while.
I know there's a bill right now in the New Jersey Assembly to make it one of the 34 states it would be at that point to have involuntary drug rehabilitation. It doesn't sound like there's many people that are against this, right?
I don't think so. I mean, I certainly am not.
No, I know you're not, but it doesn't really, it sounds like it's something that might actually breeze through.
And I think it's very foreign to people in New Jersey right now. Nobody's heard about this. When I've moved back here, I talk to people about involuntary, rehab, and they're like, "Oh, how can you do that?"
Well, but the problem is that even people in Pennsylvania and New York and Delaware, they don't know either. And I think you've just enlightened them that they now have options if they have a family member that they're worried about. Jackie, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here. Jackie Adams is a psychotherapist and is pushing for involuntary drug rehabilitation for addicts. When we come back, retail, if you haven't noticed, has changed changed completely. Reinventing retail, that's the topic for our next segment.